yeah, I'm the Ramble Mechanic. Eric Sprague. I've been doing this for about 28 years. Currently in North Carolina, working for L&M Performance, and that is Lucas. If anyone's questioning that or doesn't know that already, but worked a little bit of dealer, a little bit of independent, a little bit of motorsport and performance. Kind of done a little bit of a mix of things. Currently working as a diag and drivability tech, and I managed to break a lot of stuff. It's a pretty good time.
That's how you fix it, right? That's how you get good at fixing it. You break it. Yeah.
Eventually.
All right. I am Bobby Belts. I am unemployed. Currently unemployed. For probably the better part of maybe 15 years, I've been a technician, and maybe even including some years as a lube tech. I will be the first to say I am not an A tech. I question if I am a good tech. But I know what I know, and I'm humble enough to say that I don't know what I know. At least I try to. But I've been started off at a dealership, did some mom and pop for a couple of years, and my expertise, I guess you can say, would be fleet. For major company fleet, working on anything from little Ford Escapes to Freightliner M2 chassis. Just kind of all a mix mash of stuff, and then I like to build some cars from here and there. So that's my outline.
All right. So, I mean, what got us talking? What got my attention? I saw your Jim Farley video, and specifically the one talking about the way SLTS, or service labor time standards, or slave labor time standards, is
Mm-hmm.
laid out, which is Ford's warranty time. That's their book rates for warranty times, recall, stuff like that. What actually caught my attention is slave labor time standards. I hadn't heard that since I left Ford, and it made me giggle a lot.
I got that from like a Reddit post. I mean, I was the one who said, because I'm looking this up because I know SLTS is not a new thing. This is just the updated thing from what, like 5 years ago, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. I mean, you could say you worked as a Ford dealership right before, right?
Yep, yep. A number of years back, that was probably 15 years ago now.
I don't want to make
So
you feel old.
I already do. Don't worry, it's fine. But there's been a lot of talk of the tech shortage and the lack of skilled personnel coming into this industry. I mean, it's been a thing probably as long as I've been doing this. It's gotten a lot worse in probably the last 5-8 years. So, I've done a bunch of videos on what's driving that. That Jim Farley video was so absent-minded and just
Tone
so
deaf.
out of touch and disconnected. It really set me off a little bit.
Yeah.
Keeping the videos clean meant they were a lot shorter than it was actually recorded. But
YouTube don't like when you say the naughty words. I know that. That's why, as a mechanic, it's just very hard to filter that, and I get it.
yeah, I think there's a lot of points you hit that I hadn't even considered. Coming from a fleet side, not as much independent experience, it just made me think about things from a different perspective. But what are the universals? We've got cost of emission, the cost of tooling, the cost of training, the cost of uniforms in some places. It's extreme. A toolbox is 10, 15 grand.
Yeah.
Basic box. You can get them cheaper, and I think we talked about some of the Harbor Freight stuff that has really come a long way.
Yeah.
Harbor Freight started, the only thing that was guaranteed is you were going to get hit with shrapnel when the socket exploded. So the Icon stuff is really well known, and it's come really far from what it has been in the past. But what are some of the obstacles you dealt with the cost of getting into it?
Well, I made a short a while back that talking about my Snap-on box right here. When I went to trade school, they dealt with Snap-on, the Universal Technical Institute. I was one of those kids. And they are the second biggest buyer of Snap-on next to the U.S. government. So they had a flaming deal, 50% off for all students, right? And, as a kid, at least for me, I was just, you're so drawn to like the Fast and the Furious, working the Snap-on toolboxes. Your, was it rose-colored glasses? I guess I'm bad with analogies here, but still. And the fact that you can get this $10,000 toolbox, I think it was 12 with tools, for $6,000. I mean, whoa! Look at that. Who else is getting that deal? But what they don't tell you is that master toolkit doesn't come with half the tools you need. And it comes with things like I think it came with a claw hammer. or like, stuff like I'm never gonna use this type of stuff, and I really could use this part of the tool, and it really I like the quality of Snap-on. The price point kind of bugs me out now that when I moved to Florida and couldn't bring this box with me because it was too expensive to transport down there. I had to bite the bullet and buy like a bunch of Icon and U.S. General tool cart, and didn't treat it any different than I treated my Snap-on tools, and they work just fine. Harbor Freight's come a long way. I remember buying a $20 really tiny 3/8 air ratchet. Beat that thing to hell, and it held up pretty good. I mean, I would take it, remove bell housing bolt with it, drop it right on the floor because who cares, and it was okay, but I definitely the quality has gone up, especially if you're just a backyard, shade tree mechanic. Like, who can fault you for buying that? Who can fault you for buying that?
I mean, you look at individual sockets that are, $150, $200 or more. Some of the 3/4 stuff is
Oh yeah.
insanely expensive. As far as software, scan tools, stuff like that, is that something you guys used a lot, or did they provide all that?
In terms of fleet, we actually had a lot of dealership tool. IDS, we still had IDS. That was a big, not an eye opener, but they were like, oh, you know how to work the IDS, even though it's a pretty basic system. So that was like second nature to me. We had the Tech 2, which I like the Tech 2. Even now, as old as it was still a very good system.
Still, there's stuff you can do with that you can't do with anything else. It's still
I know, right?
cool.
And then we had our aftermarket, like Autels, that we kind of barely touched. Working from a fleet, you do what you can, and then it's not a big deal if you got to send it out to the dealer. Because you can only do so much, and they'll only invest so much, because they're working with maybe 2, 3, 4 brands. If you got some type of gateway module that's bugging out, really in depth, like I'm spending hours on this, they're gonna be like, all right, let's just send it to the dealer. We'll bite the bullet on that. They don't. We really won't do transmission pulls. We won't do engine rebuilds. Maybe from time to time you will. Working in a fleet, the biggest job I did was I pulled a transmission off a E350, E250 van, and just did the front seal because it was leaking. But that's cake work. I mean, if you ever worked on the E-Series vans, I was in the dealership. I used to be the guy to take them out and give it to the guy so he can rebuild. They were so much fun. I loved doing those. I would get it down to like a science: 40 minutes out, 45 minutes back in. It was actually really fun. But yeah, fleets. It's a whole different world than a dealership. It's night and day.
You got the politics. You've got the flat rate mentality where nobody is willing to help. Nobody's willing to help people grow and evolve, right? I mean, we have a shortage because there's nobody coming in. All of these elements, the bad culture, the cost of getting into it. There's no accountability mentality. Everything is about whose fault it is. There's no drive to learn. There's no drive to improve. There's only a drive to keep running people through the grinder. I mean, I always looked at dealerships as meat grinders.
It's a revolving door.
Yeah, I mean, what it is, you bring people in, you keep those senior masters, those certified guys, so you keep your warranty status, and everybody else is in, out, use them up, burn them out, drive them into the ground, and then kick them to the curb. The lack of understanding and lack of realistic expectations, I think, was one of the biggest killers for me. So it's funny, we had a common service manager. It's funny that our experiences were so different. Our level of backside contact was a little different. I had some family that also worked at the dealer that made that a really awkward position right out of the gate. So there was a definite strange approach, I guess. But some of the stuff that I saw, he really brought out the worst in what I experienced at the dealer. The favoritism is a huge one, especially when you're on flat rate. There needs to be an even distribution of the gravy work, of the stuff that's going to pay and buffer the hours from where you're not making time on warranty stuff. Did you guys get paid on diag time when you were there?
Did we? I think if it was anything, it was an hour, and only an hour, no matter how long you took.
Yeah, for customer pay stuff, we could sell whatever we needed. Warranty stuff, we would get 3 or 5 cents, and that was it.
Gosh.
Same thing, it didn't matter if it was a parasitic draw, if it was a network problem.
If you're digging through this car to find, you're pulling a dash to find out what's going on behind it. Yeah, it's only that much. It sucks.
Yeah, and that's not right. I mean, this is not an easy trade to be in. None of these cars. The dealer has the benefit of having line familiarity, and that's huge. I think it's not given the the weight that it needs. So if you work on the same line, whether it's F-150s and you bounce to a Fiesta, right? There's a shared strategy. There's a shared mentality with the way the car's put together.
Mm-hmm.
Where, I mean, I just took you through our shop a little bit ago. We've got, a Dodge on one side, a Denali in one, an F-350, a Focus, and an Audi in another bay. So it's like you've got no common ground there.
Yeah, and you'll get that too. Like you said, you're in an indie shop. That's you gotta be on your toes, I guess, in a way. Not so much, but you gotta you can't be comfortable with one brand. You gotta expand, and you gotta really use your mind. You worked at a dealership longer. My stint at dealerships were, I think it was 3 years before I said, this place is going to kill me. And, and then I left. At that time, I was applying for the utility around here, which I'm glad I got. That was one of the best jobs I've ever had. We feel the same way about flat rate, with flat rate being an extinct way of living.
Absolutely. It needs to die. I mean, I have no problem with tracking productivity, effectiveness, efficiency. I'm fine with tracking it. And there are some guys that do it right.
Mm-hmm.
There are definitely some guys that do it 100% appropriately, and they make it work. As a whole, they're not using the traditional flat rate model, to my understanding. It is flat rate, but they're not going by the book is the Bible, the labor guide is the Bible. There's a lot more flexibility there, and there has to be. I'm not a fan of flat rate because there's too much variability. There's too much control taken from the tech to control the paycheck. That's a huge problem when you walk into this. You're being expected to lay out tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars over time. I mean, I'm not saying you walk in the door and you're cutting a check for $50,000, but over time you are going to spend a significant amount of money on tooling, equipment, training, subscriptions. How many shops don't provide training? That's a huge thing. We have, ASTA is a huge event, and it's growing every year, and it's one we're at every year. Cars are not getting simpler. Even the fleet stuff. I mean, those are usually pretty bare bones vehicles, not a lot of features. I mean, do they even have sync in any of the Ford fleet stuff? Or
I think, yeah, absolutely. I noticed that fleets won't always, at least the ones I work with, won't always opt for the bare bones, but I think they go by quantity of lot. So whoever buys the vehicle says, all right, I need to get these now. What do you have and how similar they are, and we'll just get those. I never actually talked to the person who bought the vehicles. It's a whole different department, kind of. But yeah, they're not so flashy. I think the flashy ones they do to beat their chest. Oh, look at us getting these hybrid vehicles. They bought like a Mitsubishi Outlander EV, or not an EV but a hybrid, and that had all the bells and whistles. Just because usually those are you're paying a lot for the hybrid system, might as well throw in the nice touchscreen.
That's a choice.
Yeah.
Probably got Toyota myself, but
yeah. I mean, I think we had like 2 of them just to say, oh, look at us, we're an electric company. We drive electric vehicles. Yeah.
So, what kind of training do they give you guys?
I factory training, actual factory training. They will. I've gone to, let's see, I've done, AC Delco has training. They like throwing you at that, so I've been to AC Delco training. Factory training is hard, though. To get to like Ford factory training or Freightliner factory training, the second fleet I was in actually had Freightliner come out. They would bring, I guess you call them bug out boards, where like you work on them, and they pay good money to them for them to come to the shop to do it. Other than that, they don't skimp out on the training. It's just hard for them to fill the position because, Ford wants to fill their guys, 90% of their guys, and then they'll leave like 2 seats open for the outside. So it's hard to get that.
So you're going to the actual Ford training centers though for it.
Yeah, they'll fly you out, pay you for everything. It's really good actually.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. My dealer wouldn't pay me to go to the classes.
Exactly. I remember. Well, when I came out of the UTI, I came out with all those certifications. So I was the last person they were going to send out. But even the guys that needed it, it was like pulling teeth. Actually, now that I remember it, I don't know if you ever, because you said you lived on the island about 10 years ago, probably a decade ago, right?
We left in 19, but we were there from 05 to 19.
Do you remember the Accessoride, the ugly British-looking vans things with the? Yeah, I worked on those. They flew me out to Indiana to work on those, train on those. because it was the weirdest thing. AM General made it. Same guys who made the original Humvee. It was a Ford powertrain, 4.6, good motor. What's the transmission that made it up to? 4R, I forget. You know, yeah, the 4-speed that comes in the Crown Vic. Pretty much a Crown Vic engine and trans. And then it was a Camaro rear end. Not even lying. Independent rear end with a solid bar going across it to make it like a solid axle. It was a weird design. I don't know why they couldn't just throw a 9-inch and call it a day. But I went out there. It was pretty nifty. That company's long gone, I think, or at least the vehicle's long gone. It was all right. I remember because we would do warranty work on a lot of them, and their blower motors were made of hopes and dreams and plastic. So not blower motors. Sorry, blend door motors. And I got so good at pulling the dash out, and I was doing it. And stupid me, young, they're talking about how it was a common problem. So we're going there, and they're talking about how do you do it, and they ask a question. They're like, "Hi, so how normally do you guys take to do it?" And I'm like, "Oh, I do it in this." Well, they're like, "Oh," I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I guess I'm just fast at doing it." I was like, "Damn, I'm stupid. Why didn't I just say, shut your mouth? Say you do it longer. Get that warranty time to stay where it is." Yeah, that was like the only training the dealership ever sent me out to. It wasn't even Ford training.
Yeah, that was one of the struggles. So they obviously Staten Island, the training center I had to go to was Yonkers. They would give you $20 for the week for tolls.
Yeah, okay.
It cost me $194 because I was running the West Side Highway. So Verrazano, Battery Tunnel, West Side Highway, Whitestone up to Yonkers. Yeah, I lost my mind at that. That's, I think, a big issue. There's no in-shop training going on in a lot of the dealers. It's all, you go to the training, if you can't find it in service info, in Oasis, in the workshop manual, PCD, send an engineering request. Now, I have worked in dealers where you send the request for an FSC and then you move on to your next car. Also had the opposite. You send the request and then you're waiting for that FSC to get back to you before they will even dispatch you another car.
Yep.
So there you're sitting for, how many days are you waiting for this guy to actually get back to you before you're able to do anything? And that's not...
Yeah, the customer ain't got to be happy about that.
A customer's not going to be okay, and the tech's making no money while you're doing it.
Yeah. It's so lose for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Except whoever is cutting the checks, because a lot of them seem to take the mentality, if you produce a lot, I'm paying you too much. It's funny with the warranty stuff. I didn't learn that trick with the flag cards, so I was punching stuff in what it was actually taking me, which sometimes worked out, most of the time it didn't. A warranty job pays 1.9, I get it done in 1.0. It never clicked for me that that's how they calculate those adjustments they make.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have in the aftermarket, we're also seeing where a lot of those times where states are requiring consistent consistent times across jobs, all data, and some of the aftermarket providers are starting to actually show OE warranty times for retail jobs.
And we were talking about that off. How that's gospel. Like, they will follow that book. A lot of shops will follow that book to the T, and if they're screwing the books, it's like, well, how deep can we get into this where now even indie shops are getting screwed on this?
Oh, and how far, how much stuff is not accounted for in there? There's no rust, there's no corrosion, there's no age, there's no attrition, I tried to fix it myself first. And that all adds time.
I laughed at that SLTS video. I know they talked briefly about it, and it's just like, we're counting for rust on things like header bolts. Oh yeah, because that's the only thing that rusts Ford, right? Yeah, sure.
I've never seen a Windstar.
I have a Windstar to show you. 03 Windstar family van. That door. Oh boy, it is so bad.
So but then we still have the flat rate is one side of it, but you've still got the overall compensation packages. Outside of, I know utilities you mentioned were pretty good about benefits, retirement, stuff like that.
Very, very good.
So I don't know the exact count on jobs. I can tell you I've had benefits offered at 4 of them, and I've definitely worked more than 4 places.
I was gonna say, I don't think you've only worked. For reference, when I worked at the dealership, you got health insurance, and I think that was it. No 401k, no pension, none of that. When I worked at utilities, there was 2. One utility I worked for, only worked for 2. One of them was, you got 401k, you got a pension, you got a stock option, you got health benefits. They partnered with the city so you can get into any museum for free. Any museum, any park, any zoo. Bring people with you. They really robust benefit program. The other one didn't have a pension, but it was 401k matching, and then like I think it matched. So they put I think 6% of your pay even if you didn't do anything. They already put it to your 401k, and then they matched up to 4%. So it was pretty decent. I mean, no pension, but pretty decent. And then the health insurance on that one was okay, but it was. I mean, I haven't heard of anything similar to any dealership doing that.
Yeah, dealership. The insurance that we had when I was at Ford was it was there, but it was so ungodly expensive. It almost wasn't worth it. I want to say it was for a family. I want to say it was $275 a week
Oh my gosh.
or something like that. And this is early 2000 teens, late 2000s. It was phenomenally expensive, and the
Man.
coverage was terrible. It was heart attack insurance. It's kind of run the gamut. My wife works in healthcare, so that generally is a lot better as far as the healthcare options.
I've noticed that. Is it a thing? My wife is in healthcare too. Why is it? I've worked with so many technicians, and I've asked them, "Oh, what does your wife do?" "Oh, she's a nurse." "Oh, she does this, she does that. She's a healthcare administrator." It's like our bodies are broken, and I feel like we gravitate to someone who can fix it. So
We're providing the service of giving them job security.
there it is.
They get on-the-job training at home, and they're not going to get sued for it.
Exactly, and we fix their stuff.
I think it's really frustrating that we scream about being treated like professionals, about being treated better, about being treated like other skilled trades are. At what point do we seriously look at ourselves in the mirror and say, am I presenting myself as such? Am I presenting myself as a professional? Am I able to interact with someone like I'm a professional, like I'm serious about what I do, like I'm a competent person? I mean, there are certainly techs that I've worked with, that I've worked alongside, that I've managed, that I would have no problem throwing in front of a client, and they have no problem doing it. There's a common understanding that sometimes they want to talk to the guy who's got grease under his fingernails, right? They want to talk to the guy who's actually doing the work because he probably has a better idea than the people who are trying to explain it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I fully support. You have a lot more credibility when you come up and, well, maybe not if you're covered in grease because somebody just bombed you, but you have a lot more credibility when you're clearly the guy working on the car. If you come up and you look like you just crawled to work, Army crawled to work, I don't know that I want to put you in front of a client.
Let alone get you in my car.
Yeah, you go up front and you can't hold a conversation without hostility or creative sentence and answers. Every other word like parsley.
Yeah.
And that's part of the industry. I mean, there may be some harsh language at times in the shop. At least once a day I hear something that makes me blush. Knowing when to turn that off and having the ability to turn it off and still sound competent, sound like you know what you're doing. When I started doing this, the common perception was this was a job for idiots and felons. I think we're past that point now. You can't be an idiot and actually do this and be successful at it.
It is not carburetors, points, and condensers anymore. It's how good are you with CAN bus networking and voltage drops and a module literally spazzing out. It's you can't throw a wrench at it and fix it anymore.
I mean, occasionally you can. You can
Occasionally,
hard
yeah.
enough, and the problem will stop. Other things may stop, but some will stop. But we deal with hydraulics, we deal with fluid dynamics, we deal with thermal dynamics, we deal with electrical engineering, we deal with mechanical engineering. There are a lot of skills that we have to just make it by. Not even to be good at it, but you have to have a really deep understanding of a ton of things. On-the-job training is great. On-the-job training is probably the most effective training.
Yes.
Without the foundational knowledge behind it, where are you going? You're not getting anywhere. There have to be teachable moments in the shop. We try to do a pretty routine training, after hours. Making that work consistently has been a little challenging because we've had a lot going on here the last year. There have been a lot of changes, so it's gotten a little out of sync. I have committed to the guys we are getting back to that on a regular basis. We have to do it. We have to stay current. And we'll hit ASTA every year. Usually we'll hit one or two other events. We'll break up the other guys and go. Lucas does a lot of stuff with his podcast, and usually one of the techs will go with him to whatever event it is, whether it's Tools, ETI, ITGC, whatever. SEMA, that's the one everyone wants to go to. Did it once, I'm good. I am not not compatible with Vegas. Unless it, SEMA and the race happen at the same time, then I would probably, yeah, I would do that.
Oh yeah,
But
but usually a hot bid to have them both at the same time.
yeah, I think they're about 3 weeks apart, and it's still a disaster. But so we get a lot of training throughout the course of the year, but we still constantly are doing stuff in the shop. And you have to stay current. You absolutely have to. And so many shops don't provide that. There's very little support for the staff in the shop. And it's not just the backside guys. It's not just guys twisting wrenches. There's a lack of awareness of, how much training and growth is needed everywhere. I mean, everyone can always be better. I don't care how good you are at your job. You can always be better at it.
Always.
There's always some area you can improve, something you can do better, something you can learn a new way to do. Be brave enough to suck at something new every day is really true.
I think a humble technician is a good technician. And we don't have there's a few in the field, but there's some. I mean, you'll run into that just they built the car. They were buddies with Henry Ford. They told him how to build the quad cycle when it came out. But oh man, it's you got to eat your lunch sometimes. You got to be like it's a good mentor will tell you don't know everything. You don't have to know everything. Just don't act like you know everything and then screw it up and cost money. Bring someone's attention to it, and I know it's hard in a flat rate scenario. I tell people like, hey, I need to push a car in, or I don't know why this is not doing this. Can you give me a hand? It's like, well, yeah, that guy needs to make money too. And being that guy to not know everything it's fine. I'll admit I don't know everything. I bounced around for a dealership to fleet, so it's completely two different worlds.
Well, and I think that lack of self-awareness is something that it creates I don't need service info. I do this every day, all day. I know everything. It creates that mentality. It also creates a lack of self-accountability. Self-reflection and self-awareness is something that we have to have. We're working on mechanical machines, but we've got to know what our boundaries are. We've got to know where our lane is. We've got to be able to stay in our lane, or if we need to jump out of it, we need to get some guidance and understand we don't know what we don't know. We're going to find out at some point. Hopefully not the painful way, but it happens. I have let a lot of smoke out of a lot of important things, and I have yet to find a way to put it back in. I've tried.
You do, you'd be $1 million man, I'll tell you that.
Career change. But, the training goes beyond just the technical. It goes beyond the management training, training everybody to work together. And that part of that synergy front to back, there's got to be a somewhat symbiotic relationship there. And there's a lot of that. If you're mentoring somebody, I've tried a lot of times. I don't feel like I did justice to the apprentices we had here because there's still that drive to be able to get cars out. We have to get cars out. It's the job. It's what we do. So trying to balance that, and we're a large shop with a small staff. We have 10 bays, 8 lifts, and 4 techs. Sounds like a dream environment. It is a very high stress environment. There's a lot of workflow management, and it's a productive kind of stress. Between workflow management, I do a lot of the eval and testing. I don't do as much mechanical work, so I'm kind of head down and brain stuff all day long. It's really hard for me to unplug that and work with an apprentice and be able to effectively guide them, because that's attached at the hip for 6 months, in my opinion. 3 to 5 years is kind of our target for when we're going to have someone we can just kind of kick them in the butt, throw them at a car, and tell them to go make it gooder. But it takes time to get there. They come in, they don't know anything.
And you don't want them to fail.
You don't want them to fail, and you don't want them to get disgruntled either. You've got to keep them motivated and engaged and wanting to do this. I love what I do. I absolutely love it. I love every aspect of it. Even when I'm getting my ass kicked by something, I'm enjoying it. Maybe not in the moment. I think it's safe to say that at that moment I become the grumpy guy that nobody wants to be around because I may physically remove your head.
It's fair enough. We've all been there.
Again, that's part of it. It's only frustrating until you learn it. It's only hard until you know what you're doing. Once you know what you're doing, it's easy. And that's where I think a lot of people, there's a big disconnect, especially, I hate to say it, but the guys in my generation, there's a disconnect that, what do you mean you don't know how to change oil? What do you mean you don't know how to take a tire out? You don't know how to set a lift. How the hell do you not know how to set a lift?
Teach them.
So it's...
it's like, it's that simple. We weren't born knowing everything. If we did, crap, this world would be a whole lot better. You'd think. But I like to rip on, and I know I'm very crucial to the boomer generation, for the ones who are literally retiring as we speak. And I made a video about it. It was like, you're the reason. If there's a reason. We know there's a technician shortage because of pay and not want to work on bullcrap, and then kids just not finding this interesting because I was once that guy. We were all once that guy. How do you put up a lift? How do you set this car up? I used to be scared of electrical because if I replace something, do I have to reprogram it? I didn't know. But if I tell you something ridiculous and you say, "What is wrong with you?" It's just like, well, all right, I don't want to work here. I don't want to work with these people. I assume this is what the whole industry is a bunch of cutthroat men that just want you out of their space. Like that. Yeah, you're not helping us. You're not helping the industry.
There's a couple trainers that I am very adamant if they have a class, I go to it. It may be a class that is more entry level, but I get something out of every class I sit in. If I don't get something out of the class, I failed. But if one person asks a question, I promise there's somebody else that has that question. There's somebody else that doesn't know. We can wing it on some stuff. I mean, I spent a lot of time figuring out how to, and more importantly, how not to lift a car. I've never dropped one. I have damaged plenty of cars putting them up. We don't have that level of forgiveness now with the vehicles we see. I mean, there's so much plastic and carbon fiber and fiberglass.
Yeah.
If you have a question, just stop and ask it. If somebody is not willing to give you an answer or help you through it, then find somebody else.
I actually have a perfect story about that. Speaking of lifting things, this is when I first started out, and we're talking about those big, ugly MV1s. Lifting, barely lifted anything in school. They usually kind of set it up for you. And these were actually like chassis, body on frame vehicles, and I was lifting it from the pinch point of the vehicle, and no one, and what I got was amateur. Not like, oh, dude, you're supposed to no, don't lift that up. You're supposed to put it on the chassis that can hold it. Like amateur. Yeah, of course I'm an amateur. Just help the amateur. It doesn't take you much time. Yeah, it doesn't take you much time to say, look, don't lift there, lift there. End of story.
One caveat with that, and this is a big weakness of mine. If somebody comes over and asks me for something, my first instinct is to go over, shove them out of the way, and do it.
Yeah.
I have been working very actively to not do that. Now my first question, did you check service info? Did you Google it? I know that's an ugly word in a lot of shops. Mm-hmm. I don't care. If it gets you the answer, let her rip.
Oh, man, I'll tell you, AI, asking a lot of, like, there is, I get what you're saying, because it's like, that's like a last resort to me. It's like, hey, ChatGPT, what could this be?
So, funny thing with AI, we gave a trial run to an AI that was shop-based, or shop-centric. Yeah, so it needs some work.
It does.
I like the concept. I have yet to see a spark plug that requires 90 foot-pounds. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Volvo would have not had spark plugs after that. So and that's where it becomes dangerous, though. Somebody who doesn't know, doing spark plugs on an inline 4-cylinder engine is not something that I would hesitate to give an apprentice. Mm-hmm. Especially when we have service info with lots of pictures. And I don't say that in a derogatory manner at all. If you don't know and you have a visual reference, you're good. I like pictures. You throw somebody at a set of spark plugs and all of a sudden they just ripped all the threads out of the head because, the Goog or the AI told them 90 foot-pounds for the spark plugs. They have no reference. They don't know. And that's one of those pitfalls where it's like, oh God, yeah, that's not great. That's kind of you guys need to fix that. We had some really good conversations with the company. I'm not going to say who it was, but I have had some really good conversations with a couple of developers, a couple of the higher-ups at the company about the issues we encountered. I'm all for it because it does streamline and it does parse things out really effectively, and it makes it a lot easier. I love Ford Service Info. I've also got a lot of experience navigating it, trying to muddle your way through PCED if you don't know where stuff is, or ISTA. That can make you age rapidly if you don't know how to find stuff. I went through a couple classes specifically on ISTA. It still took me 2 hours to get into a car the first time I used it because I couldn't remember where anything was. The Germans are great at efficiency. They are not good with intuitiveness. Their navigation in Otis is not great either. It expects you to know. It doesn't really IDS is very simple, very straightforward, pretty easy to figure out what you need for the most part. Watching a new guy figure out how to pull codes is kind of amusing at times. But
Once you
So
learn it,
that's
you're good. I mean, IDS is
yeah.
so user friendly.
Oh, and same thing with tech stream, same thing with even the tech 1. I mean, GDS is definitely not the tech or the tech 2. A lot of them are very intuitive. They're getting better about it. They're also taking away the tech's side of being able to see things, and they want everything going through their engineering or their calculated test plan algorithm or whatever it is. And we don't have the ability to see a lot of data on some of this stuff. We don't get those description operations we get in WSM. You don't necessarily get those with some of this stuff. Mode 6. There is no Mode 6 data in ISTA. If there is, I haven't found it. So, that's one of those things. I mean, that's a really powerful tool.
Yeah.
Ford does it beautifully because they catalog everything and lay it all out for you. But there's no Mode 6 in ISTA. They don't want you thinking why. They just want you
to fix it.
Calculate test plan, run through 3 or 4 steps. Okay, replace this and retest. Which is cool, but I still want to know why. I want to know why the thing does the thing and how it does the thing.
That's a good tech. Someone who doesn't want to be a parts changer. They want, that's what they want, is to be a parts changer. You be efficient. We'll take the guesswork out of it. You tell me what code it is, and throw this part at it. I've worked with some techs that will literally pull apart. I know the module's defective. How many times you got on IDS Ford Oasis, and it just says the first step. If it's like code this, replace module. That's a common fault. And I've had guys rip apart modules that were just like, oh, you see that circuit fried right there. It's just that's what gets us ticking. I love that, and yeah, it's taking that work out. That's
the cool part about this, and I think that's one of the things we don't necessarily teach. And I know the trade schools don't teach it. I spent a little bit of time at Denver Adult Daycare. Denver Automotive and Diesel College, way back in the early 2000s. I figured I wanted to get some paper under my belt. I'd been in the industry for a few years already, and that did not go well. But there's no systemic approach. They're not teaching thought. The thought process is the most important part of what we do. We're very routine-based. There's a lot of repetition to what we do to a point, but there's got to be a thought process behind that. There's got to be a thought process guiding that, right? Mm-hmm. There's got to be that critical thinking to associate, even if you don't know for sure, right? You go out to a car, you pull a code. When you're teaching somebody to do diag, we start with scanner data, right? You start with the basics of electricity, how the sensors work, how the circuits work, how things do what they do. You have to work into a critical thinking approach to associate, okay, is a misfire, it's going to be fuel, spark, or air. I have an ABS light on, I have a speed sensor code, is it the speed sensor, tone ring, wiring, ABS module? Run through and associate those systems. But you do that through, part of it's research, part of it is a lot of research that probably isn't happening at work all the time. Some of it does, but there's got to be that drive. That's the other place apprentices aren't. I think they're not given the freedom, or they're not given the. It feels like a lot of the newer guys coming in, they have to almost be told something's okay before they go do it. Right? They're not very self-motivated. That's, I don't know, that's tough to deal with for me, because if I saw something, I would go home, I would sit up till 3 in the morning watching service info, watching training videos. Well, not Googling, we didn't have Google, but reading through, all that. I remember changing discs out because some of the Euro stuff was spread out over 3 or 4 DVDs or CDs.
Oh, wow.
I'm dating myself. And just reading description operation on stuff that half of it was missing, but I got at least a rudimentary understanding. A lot of the kids coming in today, they don't want to take that time. They want to go home at the end of the day and not think about it anymore. It's like, this is a lifestyle. I'm weird like that. I'm kind of a freak because I don't stop working ever. So there's that, but I think there's a lot to be said. The apprentices need all the attention we can give them. We've got to make this a place that's fun to work, that's engaging, and that draws you in. But they have to have that curiosity, that drive to want to learn and understand the whys, not just the hows.
Yeah, you can't hold their hand and just like, I got this problem, and then the exact problem, you fix it, and then walk away. I mean, I've had that's been early technician me was like that. Instead of people sitting there and telling me what to do, a lot of the time they would fix it and walk away like, like I don't have time for this. And then stupid me would just kind of abuse that and not really like, I need to sit down and learn this. Either have that self-motivation to do it, or like, dude, I need you as a master technician, as someone who's going to help me, like, explain this to me. That was a fault of my own, and I had to take a long time to get that like in my head, where it's just like, look, you can't be riding on someone's coattails forever. You're going to be that older tech that someone's going to have to look up to you, and then what? How are you going to fix it yourself?
Oh, but it's comfortable, you have that production monkey hanging on your back, a
Mm-hmm.
flat rate. So if you have to spend a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour reading and understanding how something works, and then navigating an unfamiliar tool to find the information you need, IDS is great because it gives you everything.
Oh,
Unfortunately,
yeah.
it gives you everything. So you have to sit there and interpret some PIDs that, to me, some of the names on them don't make sense. So you have to go through and compile all of that, figure out what you do. Nowadays you can kind of take the laptop with you and bounce between tabs. Back in the day, you had a computer and you had your IDS computer, so you're bouncing between the two because the cable on the VCM was, you might have 10 feet.
Yeah, it only reaches so long. You better hope no one pinched that connector. I can't tell you how many times there communication issues. We had like the crappiest laptops, and it was just like boom, 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 like with the USB. It's like, come on, just try to pull a code.
Yeah, 20 VCMs and 3 work, maybe, on a good
If
day,
you're lucky.
if the pointers are aligned properly.
Yeah.
And there's so many things. I mean, we got off track a little bit there.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But,
There's a lot to talk about in this industry.
oh, we could go for days with why there's a shortage. I mean, really, how do we fix it? How do we make it better? I think the impasse between techs and owners is huge.
Yeah,
And that's
massive.
That's global. Whether it's dealer, whether it's independent. Fleet, I think, probably doesn't feel it as much, but the politics are still very, very real.
It's very much there. I'll tell you that. A lot of the fleets are considered redhead stepchilds of the company. They're different. They're different because they don't make money. If you're working for an electric company, that lineman putting up that transformer on the pole, fixing that wire, he's making the money. You are an expense to put that on the road, but they know that they need you because they can't afford to drop 4 or 5 Freightliners off at the dealer to get them serviced. So it's yeah, they
Service department there.
it really is. I mean, it's so they you're like what's the word, a necessary expense to them.
Necessary evil.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, that's I mean, that's how dealers look at service departments. They're the thing they have to do to sell the cars, but they really don't want to. Probably 50 to 60% of your staff is technicians, if not more. I mean, the dealer I worked at, I would say probably 70% of their staff is service technician when they manage to keep it full. Anyway, that's a lot of moving pieces. If you have, let's say, 30 guys that truly know what they're doing, truly know the line, right, and truly understand it, I feel like the senior technicians really have a responsibility to coach the new guys along and train them and bring them up and build them up and help them understand how to grow and evolve and become those senior guys. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's been so taboo for so long. I mean, I'm really lucky where I'm at. We are very culture driven, and it's an awesome culture. Everyone will tell you how much of a family their shop is. This is maybe the second one I've worked in that it's the truth.
That's rare because usually when I see on job titles, "Oh, we're a family," I run. It's like you didn't come to the concept of a lot of families hate each other. So, but that's rare. That's really rare.
There were a lot of red flags. I mean, Lucas and I have an awesome relationship, and we've talked about a lot of things. But one of the things I told him, I'm like, I saw the ad, I saw the description, and honestly, I thought you were completely full of shit. When you said you were going to fly me down for an interview, I'm like, oh, is he actually serious or is he desperate? This is the thought that was going through my head. And what we're accustomed to. We're from pretty similar areas. The majority of my career was in New York. So it's you hear some of those things and you just want to run. Like you said, it's terrifying.
When I moved to Florida, before I worked for the utility company down there, I did a 3-month stint with the municipality, I guess. It was the county, and it was working on garbage trucks, police vehicles, fire department, all that stuff. And I told them, like, hey, completely clear, I'm moving from here to there. I need, I'm probably going to be starting at this point. We did an online interview, it was whatever, and then I think an in-person interview. And they're like, oh, when can you start? And I'm like, I didn't even move yet. I just came down here to just, scope out the area. And they did the whole, we're a family thing, and, this is that, and then the other. And it was, I don't want to badmouth anybody, but it was the worst shop to ever work for. I talked about how I had a 50-50 chance of dying quick story, and then it was legit too. And like they brushed it off, like, oh no, you're okay, you're still here. It's like it was an F-550, a small fuel truck for using for like fuel the golf carts on the golf courses, Florida. So it was all diesel. Diesel in the vat, the big carrier, and then we were doing the diesel tank because it got contaminated. So we did lines, we did a tank, and they said, okay, we got a transfer pump. We're gonna just transfer it in. Simple. Big monster transfer pump that I had to carry on top of this vat of diesel, and it was so old. And you hook it up to the car battery, and when I hooked it up, I put this over this open, like 12-inch vat of diesel, and I went to put it inside, and it arced over to the body. And I just go, oh, if this was gas, I'd be dead. If this was gasoline, I'd be dead. And I was like, guys, this is stop right now. Like, this is a serious. And they're just like, oh, you're telling me it's broken? Yeah, what a way to find out, right? Instead of just boom.
in so not so many words, yeah, broken is a term.
Mm-hmm.
I like my eyebrows. I like my beard.
Oh, shit, exactly. I like my body intact. It's just 50-50 chance of dying right there, literally. Just a fuel choice. So
and that was a municipality?
Yeah, it was the county, one of the counties in the area I lived in. I'll say that much. And literally, that was, I think, the next day after that. I said, this in nice words, this place is not for me. I will find other employment. It was a combination of a bunch of stuff too. It was so bad. Oil just on the floor, no one cleaning it up. They just worked like animals. It was so bad. So bad. And the LT vehicles, so we worked on police vehicles too. It was another one could be a fire hazard. If you ever remember the 5.7s they had, if you ever worked on like a 2015 Tahoe, they had the direct injection LT motors.
Did a pump in one yesterday, actually.
Did the pump on that one, right? So book says big. I had to print it out because big bold letters. Work on anything high pressure fuel. Those lines, one time use. One time use. You crack them open, they're done, you get new ones. So I was like, oh, I'm just waiting on parts for the new one. And my dispatcher was like, why can't you put the old ones back on? I was like, oh, no, because these are one time use. So here you go. Oh, you should really put it on. We need that vehicle gone. No, I'm not. I won't do that. It's also a canine vehicle, by the way, too. So I'll kill a person and a dog. Yeah, not riding on my conscience. Absolutely not. I basically fought with him and then the service manager because they couldn't source the fuel lines. They're on back order. And I'm like, oh, I don't care. Let it sit. I'm not going to put this over in and cause a fire hazard. There's some lines that I will absolutely draw that say safety is paramount. And I will not be, it won't come back from me. I'll tell you that.
Single use is single use for a reason. How many guys do, 2-3 timing chains and don't replace crankle on the Fords? If you work on Euro, everything is single use. Sometimes I'm surprised seatbelts are not single use.
Yeah.
Every bolt, you touch it on a Euro, it's 90% chance it's single use. Now, they do things a little more intelligently because it's very well laid out what is single use and what isn't. That's the cultural stuff that can really damage somebody wanting to come into this.
Mm-hmm.
You come in and, you need essentially stilts or a walker so you can stay upright in the shop because the amount of crap on the floor or you can't navigate. You got to roll a cart around. You have to grab a forklift to start moving stuff to roll a cart around. That's annoying. That's frustrating.
The biggest culture shock from going to a dealership to a fleet, especially one with like a strong union like I went to, it was work for a dealership 3 years, learning that flat rate mentality of like go, 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 and then going into a fleet when they say no, 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 no. It's like I learned to rush myself, and now I learned, and it was like the worst of worst worlds too. Like I would rush and maybe forget something, and it's just like how flat rate is. And then if you're telling me I can really like, if possible, I do an oil change a day, it's okay. I became so lazy where I had to be like, all right, look, I got to pick myself up and just work normal. Like where's the normal? I had to find the normal. Yeah. But safety is so paramount when it comes to like working in a good fleet. Like ear protection always on, eye protection always on. You want to cut something, eye protection, face shield, everything, and like, nothing is on the floor. If you have to clean up, if your day is cleaning up a mess that even though you made or not, that's your day. Like you followed that book, that safety book to the T. And I remember one day, this was in another place, we had a hurricane blow by, ripped the roof off the place. I wasn't even working. I wasn't even working as a fleet then. This was outside of that, right? So we still had safety like standards throughout the whole company. Top of the roof blew off. Particle board still there. All this crap flowing down. Don't know if it's asbestos or not, right? So I get there when I get there when when the storm clears, like when they say, and I see my coworkers shoveling and scraping out this like dust infested water. It's everywhere. And I'm like, oh, I'm not going in there. And they're like, oh, calling me lazy and ribbing me and all this stuff. And I said, no, I'm not going in there. And turn out later, I'm sitting there waiting for my supervisor to roll in. He comes by, asks me why I'm sitting out there. I tell him exactly what happens. And he goes there and reams these people out, saying, you know damn well you're not supposed to be in there. If there's a hazardous condition, we don't know if that's asbestos. We don't know if this is that. Because OSHA will come and rip them a new one. They are on their hot seat. So, I mean, at the end of the day, like, yeah, you called me lazy, but I didn't get in trouble.
Well, and that's, accountability and blame, I think, are two things that are lumped together that are not the same thing.
You got to play their game, yeah.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, especially when you get into the unions with politics and all that bureaucracy.
It's huge politics.
That's, I think as an industry, it highlights a good point. We've really let the standard slip. We haven't scaled the standard. I think would be a more appropriate way to say that. Vehicles used to be pretty simple. You might have 3 or 4 modules in a vehicle, maybe. You had a BCM, PCM, ABS, maybe a TCM if PCM wasn't doing it. But, powertrain, body, chassis.
That's it.
Now you've got some vehicles that are 100 communicable modules.
You have door modules
40,
for whatever reason.
30 is not an abnormally high count anymore. Where do you slide those standards? How do you scale those standards to maintain a high standard? Obviously I've said it a couple times, I'm in a freak of a shop. We are serving the client. That's the primary goal, and I really feel like that should be the standard for every shop. And the people coming in the door are the reason we have a door to walk through. Serving them to a high standard needs to be the standard in the industry. We do that by giving them a safe, reliable, repaired vehicle. To maintain that level of quality, to maintain that high standard, we've got to train, we've got to evolve, and we've got to move that standard up. As things get more complex, we've got to be able to scale it. We've got to be able to, just like with an apprentice, there's got to be a symbiotic relationship there with that apprentice and that mentor. The same thing with the standard. I mean, they've got to go up from what we've been accepting.
No, I get what you're saying. I think there needs to be like a balance where it's just like you gotta provide good service to the person paying you, but you also got to provide good wages and good work to the person fixing your vehicle. That's why I see the discrepancy with like a shop labor rate, like that's $250 an hour, some ridiculous number, and then you find out the average technician in that shop is getting paid $30. Well, all right, you gotta deduct. You gotta keep the lights on. You have to deduct the parts and everybody else running the scenario. But where is the the labor? That's the hands-on stuff is what the technician's doing. He's without the parts. He's doing like 80% of the work minus service writing parts and all that other stuff. So where's the balance?
I think it's a pretty 50-50 split. I've done both, and so what I would say the physical load on the techs is definitely the highest in the shop. The mechanical working with our bodies, that is a lot of load. The mental fencing that most stuff on the front counter turns into, I would much rather be in the back. I worked the counter for a couple of years. It's challenging. It really depends on the relationship you have with your clients too. That's a huge part of it. If they trust you, it's not real bad. If they don't trust you or they have questions that you can't answer or they're just not sure, somebody comes in, they don't know cars, whatever, they're taking you at your word. They go on Google and start searching what you're telling them and start seeing a video from maybe someone who thinks they know what they're talking about and really doesn't. Or they just find some troll video that is, it's a humorous video, it's a parody video. They take it at face value. Now you're having to navigate through that, explaining all of that stuff. I think techs are not quite as aware of what's going on up front as the outside perception is. It's a really easy job. It's you make a phone call, you tell them it's broke, tell them what's going to be to fix it, you hang up, you're done. Rarely is that the case. If you have a really good rapport with the client, that's usually the case. If you have to explain it, if you have to run them through their 1993 rattle trap that is leaving body panels at every pothole, you're going to be there a while. I've had individual phone calls that were an hour and a half. And while I'm on the phone, I will take all the time I need with a client or with another tech. If I need to explain something to one of my writers or one of my techs, I don't care how long it takes me so they understand it. The amount of time is insignificant compared to the level of understanding. If they understand it, cool. If they don't understand it, we're going to keep going until they do, or they just throw their hands up, say hell with it, and move on. That's something that I feel is really lacking in that sense, and that's the ongoing training, right?
Yeah.
Being able to make sure that there is a common understanding is definitely something that's been a challenge.
This is a multifaceted problem. I mean, how do we attack the problem of the entire industry? Well, there's multiple angles to hit it from. Right, techs are not getting paid enough. They're not getting trained well. These cars are ridiculously intense to work on. You name it. There's multiple ways to skin a cat over here. So yeah, I remember I worked with a supervisor. He first started off in like the 60s, 70s, working at Toyota. He said he had 3 tools he used every single day. It was like one I forgot what size wrench. It was like an 18 wrench, something else, and then feeler gauges. Because as he said, I did oil changes, valve adjustments, and then a tune-up. That was it. And he made his money, and that's when flat rate would work. But now it's not like that anymore, man. If you do not have some type of small computer or net worth of tools in your possession, you're behind the curve.
My dailies are 3 laptops, test light, DVOM, and one of probably 6 or 7 different scan tools, depending on what I'm working on. And that's my daily stuff, and my phone, because we take lots of pictures of absolutely everything. So every car is probably getting 40 to 70 photos. It can be frustrating. I had a 98 Subaru a couple weeks ago that was, it was a 98 Subaru. And it was showing that it was a 98 Subaru in the Rust Belt where we sold the country am. So,
you explain the viewer. You don't have to explain it to me. I understand. Surprised that it's still, in one piece and not like caving in. Jeez.
It was rough. But that's the spread we see up here. We'll see an Aston one day and then 30-year-old Subaru the next. We try and limit those, but they're up here. There's so many different things that need to happen. I mean, I think culturally, this industry has to change culturally. There has to be an understanding. The techs coming into this today are not the techs that were coming in 10 years ago. They're not the techs that were coming in 20 years ago. They don't respond the same way that we did coming in. The ball busting, I think, sometimes gets way out of control in the shop, and that's every shop. I mean, we've got to keep it fun. But there's got to be balance there, too. There's got to be a time to screw around and a time not to.
Greasing someone's toolbox from head to toe, it's like, what? That would throw hands. Yeah. Don't mess with someone's tools. Yeah.
I almost got shot very early in my career. One of our guys ordered a massive Matco box, and it came in when he was on vacation. So his old box was falling apart. It was done. So we moved everything over for him into the new box, put the new box in the storeroom, and then seam welded his old toolbox shut after we filled it up with wheel weights and some other stuff. So and his plan, he made it real clear. His plan was to take the forklift and run over that box as many times as he could. I thought I was going to die. Since then, I have never screwed with someone's toolbox. I will not touch someone's toolbox. All bets are off other than that. The liquid ass antics have calmed down. But, I got saturated. So our old shop, before we moved down to the new one, the climate control in the shop was not great. As in, it didn't exist. The office was heated and air conditioned. That's about it. So my bay was not. My air conditioner and heater was a 3x2 window into Luke's office. So in summer it wasn't a big deal. We just opened the doors up. We got a nice breeze through. In winter he'd put a little window fan in and blow heat into my bay. I was sitting there talking with our parts guy one day, and I just see a bunch of movement behind the fan. I'm like, what the hell is going on over there? Then the mist of liquid ass that had gotten straight through that fan hit me in the face. It was cool because it was a triple whammy. So I got to deal with that, walking around gagging for 20 minutes. Then I get home, jump in the shower, because, I go home, first thing I do, straight into the shower to warm up and clean off, especially in winter. That reactivated it.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
It was so much worse. Because it was hot, it was humid,
Oh
it was a
boy.
boiling thermonuclear shower. So my wife got to listen to me gag through a shower. It was awesome.
We used to mess
It's
with like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's part of it though. It's got to be fun.
Hmm.
I'm not good at limits on that. I'm really not good at limits on that.
Oh, it is hard to like limit. I mean, we used to mess around when I went to awesome in a high school, an automotive high school, and we used to mess with kids who just didn't want to be in the automotive, like, because you that was in order to graduate, you had to take some type of automotive class. So there's kids that just weren't interested, and they were in lab, and the teachers would know too. So they would go and be like, "Hey, whoever your name is, go down to Mister Whoever's class and ask him for the elbow grease. We need some elbow grease. We ran out of here." And it's just and the kids knew, like kids who were on it knew, and they would just shut up. And then he would just he'd be gone for 10, 15 minutes. And the best part, he'd come up and he'd empty handed. Go up to the teacher and be like, "Well, where is it?" And he goes, "Well, you said the teacher said he left it up over here. It was next to the rim job machine." It was just so bad. And like I like that one. That was a little harmless. He did. It's just yeah. You have to. Like that's harmless. That's great. But like yeah, the tools are especially how expensive they are nowadays. Well, forget it. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's part of what makes it fun. You get into some of these shops where the politics are so deep and so thick and so unwavering, you can't have fun with it. One of my favorite memories of Ford, we took a couple E350 leaf spring blocks, welded them together, and then welded them to an F350 tie rod, and we made the Thor hammer. We had a 150-pound, the blocks I'm talking about, the ones with that
Yeah. Yeah.
massive spike off the side? Yeah, they make a hell of a sledgehammer when you weld two of them together and put them on 100 feet of tie rod.
See, that does
Um,
sound like fun.
and then we hit the one of the workbenches and found out it was not as structurally sound as we had thought it was. We still
Oops.
got that thing folded, but being able to have memories like that, have the fun things you do, and that's the cool part about especially when you have clients that trust you, clients that are gonna bring you stuff like that. That was there was a video that rolled around, and it was a glaring example of so many things wrong with this industry. When we're given someone's vehicle, there's certainly a level of respect we need to treat them with. They're not ours. If we have to duplicate a concern, we have to duplicate a concern, and we've all done stupid crap. But there was a video in Brooklyn of I want to say it was a GT500 that got a clutch and tires. They road tested it. I'm sure you've been to Brooklyn once or twice. The culverts there are real. Little drainage trenches are real.
Oh,
They
they'll
got
wake you
probably
up.
20 or 30 jumps out of this GT500. The guy had a dash cam that nobody apparently saw or disconnected. So he was doing burnouts. He was jumping it. This is on a brand new clutch and brand new set of tires on I don't remember what year it was, but it was it's a GT500. They are not slow vehicles. They're not easily controllable vehicles. People call them crowd sweepers for a reason.
It's very
But
true.
he was doing 90 downside streets in Brooklyn. So gets back to the dealership after he took a few other people for a joyride in it. Pulls it in. They prep it. Call him. Guy comes to pick it up. Sees rubber sprayed all over the side of the car that had been on the tires that were just put on that were now showing cords. Clutch was shelled. So he goes home. Doesn't say anything. He limps it home. Posts the video online and then sends it to Seven on Your Side or whatever. Sends it to the news. Posts it online. I had worked with that service manager for a while. He flat out said, "Well, that's not our responsibility. He brought it in for service. We have to road test it." It's like
That's not a no. That's not a road test. That's a
that's not a road
joyride.
test. That's abusing the hell out of a vehicle that you don't get the right to do that. You get to take it for a quick little spin around the block. You do one or two pulls. I'm fine with that. Every vehicle I work on, it gets at least one hard watt pull up to 50, 60.
Because if it's gonna break, you'd rather break on you. You know.
Oh, absolutely.
That's it. You don't leave that with the customer.
But at the same time, it's like there have been a few. We've got a couple vehicles that are definitely capable of getting you into a lot of trouble. Occasionally, we have to get a little enthusiastic, and we have to get a little aggressive if we have to duplicate something. But I'm not going to go out and I'm not going into felony territory to duplicate a
No.
problem. I may, for my own gratification, if I'm told to cut it up and tear it loose, I'd go with a CLS 63. And he's like, "Yeah, at about 130, it'll start breaking up." I'm like, "Uh huh."
Sure, that's not the governor.
Well, I do it on the Garden State all the time. Well, cool. I'll go for a ride with you. I'll drive it back to the shop after we get arrested. And sure as shit, it was breaking up. It was a wastegate issue.
Mm.
But it's like,
It's like, how do you diagnose it? I've had that a couple of times where it's just like 85 and above. It starts getting this noise, and I'm like, okay, how do I do this? My license is my life. How do I do this?
yeah, it has to be a certain measure of self-control there with stuff like that. But we don't. I think it's real easy to discount the clients and their value to us. And I think
Yeah.
culture is such a big part of that. If you have a culture of serving the client, that's not an issue. If you have a culture of money, 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 you're going to abuse everything you possibly can as often as you can because you simply don't care. And that's I don't know, that's not an industry I want to be in. Thankfully,
No.
it's not one that I work in, but it's so easy to get there.
Yeah, I'm nervous for a lot of like indie shops because like the books are stacked against them in some ways, where it's like you got to spend all this money on training, on technology to fix the vehicles. They're not getting easier, like we said, and the most honest shops I know are them. I have a mantra of not buying new vehicles. My newest one is an '04 Tahoe, and I love that thing because it gives me no problems, and if it does, I can fix it. If I wasn't so mechanically inclined, like, I'm not bringing it to a dealer. I'm bringing it to the guy down the road or the guy I know, the guy that gets good reviews. And if I'm buying new cars, like, how are you going to fix it? You're going to have to dump so much money, and then we can get into right repair. Right to repair is a whole another thing. Yeah, I really don't want these shops going extinct because then it's monopolized.
I don't think we're going to go extinct. The dealers are pretty open about the fact. Some OEs are pretty open about the fact that they need us. They're guys. If you roll into Ford with a 2005 Muskrat, chances are they're going to have a real hard time dealing with it because it's an extinct engine. It's an extinct line at this point, and that vehicle is completely different now. They need us, but it's the level of service we're providing. It's the depth of service. So I think there's a lot to be said for being able to build value and charge what you need to charge. We get stuff from our local dealers, and at times it's terrifying. Like some of the stuff that rolls out, it's like, oh my god, this actually, like, they couldn't see this, right? We've had, I can't tell you how many come in with open recalls that literally drove or were towed from the dealer to us. They didn't even do mandatory recalls. How does that happen?
I've worked with some people that don't do the recalls, and it was alarming because they never say it out flat out right. Or do you remember the C-Max recall with the headliner? There was something like that. I think it was. I don't know if you probably
shorting out over the B-pillars.
And they put those little. Was it the stupid plastic things? Or no? I'm forgetting. Wow, I feel old.
I want to say the first one was like a cover that went over the wires, and then they had some sheathing, and then they had a revised headliner maybe at one point.
There's something like that. And I remember like just passing through bays, and because they're pretty common in New York, because they'd be taxis, and just seeing them come and go from other people's bays, and noticing the parts still there, and just not asking questions, but they would disappear. They wouldn't disappear with a car; they would just disappear, and it's like, oh, man, come on, are you guys serious?
It's just terrifying to me. It's just such a lack of ethic, and I mean that's fraud. That's illegal as hell.
Yeah.
Paid to do a job, regardless if it's a safety recall or a headlight bulb or a set of wiper blades or an engine rebuild. You're being paid to perform a service. If you don't do that and you represented that you did, that's fraud. That's illegal. People wonder why there's a lack of trust regarding mechanics in general.
Yeah, we don't get a good rap. I mean, well, not me. I'm not a mechanic anymore, I guess. But they don't get a good rap. It's this. Yeah, it's like all the jokes you see on sitcoms and whatever. It's the mechanic charging you. Oh, this is broken. Well, you're gonna have to. This is $3,000. Ha ha ha. We don't earn it. We're our own worst enemies in that eye.
That's one of the things that's got to change, though. I mean, there's so many shops even now that take the I'm gonna charge $60 an hour, undercut everybody else. I'm gonna pay my guys $12 an hour flat rate and roll it. They have no idea what they're doing. They're working off one scan tool that's probably 15 years out of date. They have no service info, or they have very poor service info, or maybe they have all data, maybe they have Identifix, something like that. Something that's going to give them the info they need, most of it, but they have no idea how to actually do this and do it effectively. We've seen, some of the stuff we've seen, you've seen EcoBoost sludge up because nobody ever misses an oil change. I've seen shops come in where they had to chip away carbon and sludge to be able to fit new chains on the engine. What are you doing? You can't put chains on that.
It's
Like,
gonna
you
fail.
can decline a repair. You're allowed to say, I can't fix this properly. I'm not going to fix it. I mean, are we not doing, it's the sweetness of a cheap price is usually gone the second time somebody has to go in and refix it.
Yep. Gonna be married to that thing.
Well, the money that you have some guy throw brake pads on your Corolla in the driveway for $50. Okay, so when that fails, now you have to go get a lot more done. I mean, we don't. I'm never going to misrepresent the fact we don't really cut rotors anymore. We replace them.
Yeah, I don't think you can anymore, right? Like they don't cut right. I haven't cut rotors in years, so.
There's some. You've got some room on some of them. Not a lot. The Econobox stuff, they're pretty much throwaways. But you get into the bigger stuff. Usually, you have some material on there to cut them. The problem we see is they're so rust pitted. Pulsations. We're in the mountain. Downshifting is a lost art. So we get pulsations that are kind of like a back massager. It's speed proportional, but we'll get some vicious pulsations. So we don't bother cutting them. We replace them.
And yeah.
Getting rotors.
And it's like you said on the Econo boxes, they're just cheap enough sometimes. You just throw rotors at them too. It's not even like a big savings at that point. You get some decent rotors; they don't cost too much.
And the lathe quality, I miss my old Amco from 1990 something. Well, the lathe was probably made in like 1842, but those old Amcos, you cut everything on. Awesome.
Love them. I had them in high school. Teacher would set us up to do it. He'd take some old rotors, and they're probably just out of spec, whatever. Put them in the big old shop sink, salt water, leave them for like a couple days, and then say cut away. It was just fun. It was so fun to do.
Well, and it's another one of those things that it's a lost skill. Setting valve clearances. It's one of the things that I've noticed, and I experienced this myself, and I'm sure you did too. The tech schools are so far behind. I remember when I went to tech school, it was 2002, I think. I think I did my walkthrough in 01 and then pulled the trigger and decided I was going to go in 02. I was walking through seeing a bunch of brand new Audis. I want to say there was an A5 wagon with a 2.7 twin. There were a couple other like A's in there, and maybe an A4, A6, an A8. They had some really cool cars in there that you saw when you walked through. They didn't tell you nobody was allowed to touch those cars. They were, we were going down to work on for one of the brake classes. We worked on an '84 Isuzu something. Couldn't even tell you what it was.
Oh my goodness.
It was 4-wheel drum. I do remember that. I'm like, wow, okay. Well, I know drums are intimidating. I'm like, not really. I work in a brake shop, dude. Like that's all we do is you give me 10 minutes, I will strip and rebuild these. That's not.
It's a little more parts, but it's still it's basic. Yeah.
Why are we looking at something that's so far out of date that like most vehicles are 4-wheel disc or front disc or drum? But why are we working on stuff that's like old as I am? That's concerning to me.
We would have clip cars. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You have the cut in half front wheel drive clip cars for like Diag, but they were like when I went to school, it was probably 2010, 2011. These were like 98 Pontiac Sunfires. Like yeah, sure, the technology's there, it's dated, but can we get something a little bit better? These are basic, so I get it. They need it. They need to come up.
They do, and it's not. I wish they would start teaching the mindset. Teach basic electrical, teach how to navigate service info. That'd be a good one. But teach the mindset. Teach them the systemic approach instead of chasing the symptom. Obviously, you need to know a symptom. You have to. That's why it's there. But do you start with the symptom or do you start with the system? What can cause it? What can cause this to do or not do the thing that it's supposed to be doing? What can influence it? Maybe not a direct cause, but an indirect cause. We have a misfire. Do we have an air problem? Do we have a valve problem? Do we have a control problem? Do we have an electrical issue? I mean, what can influence that system or cause that concern? Teach the mindset. Teach the thought process. Teach the workflow through a vehicle. Teach the safety stuff, like the basic safety stuff. I am a fan of safety glasses. I have many of them. But teach like how to look up lift points. Don't teach where the lift points are, what they generally look like. Teach how to look this stuff up. Teach how to use a torque wrench. I've had guys come out of school that did not know how to use a torque wrench, and it was a well-known school. It wasn't a little mom and pop. The local high school does an awesome job with their auto apprenticeship program. But some of the major trade schools, and the same thing I encountered right after Lincoln Tech had just bought the school I went to. Within 6 months of me going there, oh my God, it was a disaster.
Oh yeah.
They didn't have torque wrenches that worked. It's like that's kind of an important thing. Oh, you know,
Yeah.
you just with wheels, you hit them with a gun, and you
No.
just give it 1 or 2 whacks, and you're good. I'm like,
They don't
really?
like. I'll say like, I got my Milwaukee. I take off tires. I put on tires. But like, you've done them so many times, so you know where the tile. You're not stretching the bolt. You're not leaving them loose. These kids don't know that. You can't just say like, yeah. You got to teach them the proper way first, and then they can adapt to it and know where, like, just by feel, where the tolerance is. What can I get away with using a power tool? What do I really need a torque wrench for? That's why they're there. That's why they're in this scenario. You can't. That's just wow. I can't use it. Don't have a working torque wrench. In a school.
Educational institution. Processes is another big thing. I mean, you've got to develop repetition to be consistent and to be accurate, right? The more time you spend refining and streamlining processes, the more accurate you're going to be, the more efficient and the more productive you're going to be. That's a big struggle with me personally. I will rabbit hole the hell out of myself on some of this stuff. I don't know diesel. I haven't worked on the last diesels I worked on had mechanical injectors before.
There we go. But the better diesel is basically what you're telling me.
Yeah, no after treatment, no electrical crap, no electronics, all mechanical. New York, what's the average age of a car up there?
Oh boy, some people try to keep them for a while, like me, but I'm seeing 2013's getting junked. It's just mostly because of rust. It just that's the main killer. When I was in Florida, man, you'd see I haven't seen first generation Odysseys Honda Odysseys in mass like I did in Florida. Completely beautiful too, not even rotted. I've maybe seen one my entire time in New York.
Yeah, there's on the island we would see about 5 to 7 at the extreme most. By then, the roads had taken care of every problem that car had, and it was just not worth it. We see some old stuff down here. One of the first vehicles Lucas gave me was a '97 Ram Duel.
Dash intact?
Hmm?
Was the dash intact, or was it Doritoing, chipping everywhere? Because those are just common. I mean,
What dash?
on the well, that answered my question, I guess.
I mean, there was a cluster, but the defrost vent was much larger than I remember them being. Yeah, no, it was an intermittent electrical problem. It was a learning curve. There was if you watch any episodes of Lucas's, there's a discussion that comes up occasionally about a fuel heater in a Power Stroke with fuse that somebody may or may not have bypassed around the bottom. So, when you have that tech who really knows what they're talking about, and knows the product, and knows their stuff, and kind of knows the failure modes, the guy that if you have a little bit of an ego or generally going to argue with, yeah, I did that with Lucas. I knew I'd hit it with a test light and both sides were hot. Like, I promise you move that fuse, it'll start. Dude, it won't start. No, if you do this, it'll start. The fuse is good. I checked the fuse. You pull it? No, I don't have to. I got voltage on both sides of the test light. I know we're good. So we pulled it up the hill, and the old shop, you had to pull stuff up the hill with another vehicle, cut it loose, and roll it into the bay, which was a rather sharp turn. It was a nerve-wracking operation coming from what I had up north that was very organized to the old shop. It was very small, but it was very unorthodox the way it was laid out. So we went through all of this hell in the rain, getting it into my bay. Lucas walks over, pushes on the fuse, truck fires right up.
Ooh.
He's like, yeah, so you checked that, right? I'm like, yeah, with test light. Pulls it out, and there was a bunch of wire wrapped around the bottom of it. So that's that humility. Sometimes that's that lack of knowing what you don't know. I'm very willing to discuss my missed calls and my mistakes. It's a long list, and it doesn't leave, but my brain doesn't let me accept those as not, oops, I got to make sure I don't do that again. New systems, I'm always going to screw up. I'm always going to make mistakes. I'm always going to take a little bit longer with, and that's probably my biggest struggle, is staying on point and efficient with it. Staying within the time. I can't charge a client from my education. If I have to learn how their car works, I can't charge them for that. So there's some balance there that has to be found and maintained. And again, that's the ongoing training. You've got to be able to keep doing it. But yeah, that was rough. That was a rough couple of months. think Lucas spent a lot of time looking like, Jesus, what did I just hire?
Uh,
And then the Mercedes wheel bearing one, you'll find that in an episode somewhere. But that was so the front differential on a Mercedes is very similar to the front differential in a GM product, and that's there's steps that have been added to my process now because of that. If I screw it up once, I'm cool. If I screw it up again, I got a problem. But that's that's something that I've struggled with most of my career. The reaction to something like that up there is very different than it is down here. They don't. That's not acceptable up there. You miss it once, cool. You miss it the second time, now you're not working there anymore.
Yeah.
So, and that obviously, that was, I got flustered, I panicked, and I went off the reservation. I stepped away from my processes and developed some new ones to prevent that from happening. It's one of those things that happens. I mean, I'm not proud of it. I can look at it and say, God, that was stupid.
Mm-hmm.
How else do we learn, though? That was an expensive mistake.
It happens. I took out a garage door with a forklift though, and there's a little bit of my end and once again the shop's end. I gotta post that photo. It's hilarious. I laugh at it now. We had a broken shop door in the dealership, and the only way of getting in, because I think it was a big drive-on bay too. I think it was an alignment bay. That's what it was. And we had to use the forklift, bring it up, put a piece of wood underneath it, and then you're good, right? It was not safe at all, but that's how we did it. Well, no one told me, or I forgot, probably both, that the the parking brake on the forklift didn't work, and there was a good divot between the drive bay and the driveway and for water drainage. I got it, lifted the door up, pulled the not working parking brake, stepped out. Thankfully, went that way, not that way, and heard boom. So what happened was the forklift rolled. Lifted it up, rolled forward. It's like one of those folding doors, folded over the fork mast and behind the forklift. And the forklift just was resting between the valley, and it was just like, oh. Well, luckily I didn't get reamed out for that because it was a problem that, it was technically the dealer's problem. But I just looked at it like, oh no. Well, I guess I'm not using that bay.
Good conclusion.
Yeah, well, thankfully no one got hurt because that would have been really bad.
Yeah, we've had some issues with the doors here. Doors I don't play with. It's amazing how much weight's behind those, especially when you have multiple glass panels in them.
And how fast they will go.
Oh yeah, gravity's a great mover.
Mm-hmm. Ain't nobody's. I was gonna say the bad word, but nobody's fool. There we go.
Yeah. We've had a couple. We had one drop on a truck. Thankfully, it had a ladder rack on it that caught it, but it tacoed it a little bit, but not real bad. And it's like, God, that was one of the big ones too. That was one of the 16-foot bays. It was about 3/4 of the way up. Came down on that ladder rack. The truck was squatted for a minute. Oh, yeah.
Good talk, man. I really enjoyed this.